People just should appreciate people while they can and appreciate things while they can. That's really about it.
Yes, that is it. I can cut that part out and put it at the beginning too.
Word.
I think that's the
Word.
only part that we need to have people hear. Like they don't avoid that.
Yeah, that's the synopsis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get the capsules or did you get powder?
No, I got capsules. That's all that I
Okay, yeah.
had access
Wormwood capsules. Yeah, wormwood capsules is the truth, yo. You can't, if you drink that shit, you'll never want to drink it again.
to. Okay.
It tastes terrible.
Mhm. Yeah. No powder. But, ready?
Yep.
All right. Hey guys. I'm here today again with Taylor Budd, who has a YouTube channel called Tao Lore, and you can find him on Instagram at the same name. And today we're going to talk about death. In our last podcast episode that we did together, I feel like we talked about life. Like in the way that I labeled it, I called it a day in the life in Kings Canyon. And so to get the other side of that, I wanted to talk about death. And there was a quote from Taylor from one of his videos that I wanted to start out with, and it says, and it's very poetic. It says, "The more you remove the separation between somethingness and nothingness, the void and life itself, the more you embody yourself, God, yourself." And I feel like it's just an emphasized topic these days with the coronavirus, the death being in people's faces, fear being in people's faces. And the only way to not be sort of disturbed by something like that brings death, like a virus or something like that, is to um, be able to, rise above the state of fear that this kind of thing like shoots into people. And it really takes you, and this kind of thing I feel like takes you all the way down to the core of life and death. Obviously, like people can be afraid, okay, I don't want to catch this, I don't want to die. And it brings up those questions about like your loved ones, if they were to get it and they were to be gone right away. And so I think it's just a beautiful time to talk about it and a good opportunity to see, like in a time like this, what it would feel like to bring like remove some of the separation between somethingness and nothingness in ourselves.
Yeah. For me, I think that it's such a funny thing when it comes to death, man, because like it's the idea of death that has everybody terrified. It's not really, eternal rest doesn't really terrify people. Like that doesn't really that it's just like the idea of like, first of all, when it comes to death, nobody really cares about like when or why. It's the way that you die. The way that you die really sits with people. If you die peacefully, people can accept it more, man. If you die tragically, then it really has everything to do with the way you die. But if you saw the process of death intimately, somebody close to you dying, somebody in your immediate family, or somebody that's really close to you, it's different. Like it's death, so it's different than the synchronicity of life, but it's not separate. It's like it's so perfect. Like synchronicity might work up in a way in life to where certain connections are made, or you appreciate something, and you're like, wow, this all clicked together the way it was supposed to. But when that happens for death, most people are like distraught about that, like the perfection of death. Like every time I've been close to death, it was like, wow, this is so perfect. This is so unavoidable, and like it's perfect in a death way. It's not the way that you necessarily would want things to be perfect, but like it's unceasing, between life and death, and so like it's it's really, the ideas of death that keep people behaving the way they behave. And like, if you feel like I'm not here for a long time, I'm here for a good time or whatever,
Yeah.
then, that has everything to do with your concept or your viewpoint of death. Like,
Yes, it
the
does.
way that you live, the way that you live really shows the way that you are viewing death or handling death. So, I just feel like
Absolutely.
people, when it comes to death, like, the part that hurts the most is expecting the person to be there and the concept of what was supposed to happen, like letting all that die too.
Uh-huh.
Like when the death is there, it's so final and it's so like this is it. This is you have to face this reality. Like that part of it, if you can face it, then you can begin healing or whatever. But a lot of people get caught up in like, if this would have happened or if I would have did this, then maybe death would have went this way. But then it's just like that's the area of death that will really eat you alive. Like just thinking about what could have been or what would have been, and instead of just appreciating what you did get. And death is just it's one of them things that makes you appreciate like nothing else. To me,
Yes,
I don't know. Like
that's why I wanted to talk
things
about it.
things have happened in my life that I can appreciate that didn't involve literal flatlining death, but it was all some kind of death in some way or another. Every time that I've ever experienced like true like inner joy or inner like contentment, then some sort of death or shedding has happened, and like whether it's internal or external. So yeah, I think it's nothing makes you appreciate life more than death. Kind of a crazy paradox, but it makes sense the more you witness death.
Yeah. And this might sound sort of, it doesn't really matter how it sounds, but I remember when Nipsey Hussle died, even though I don't know him at all, obviously. I was in this really remote place in Mexico, like truly just pretty much alone. And I remember feeling like I could sense, not in some weird, like he was there, but like I could sense his energy just like go into the universe and like become everything. And like even the sun a little, and there was just like there was a perfection to it. And then you go back to how people look at death and things like that, and you just see like floods of emojis and sad people. And it does, I'm not trying to invalidate any of the sadness that comes with death. Obviously that's ridiculous for people that knew people that have died, but it was just an interesting experience. And I feel like, yeah, which I totally relate to the whole idea that there's the duality of the experience of when you've experienced true joy, there's also some sort of death with it. And I feel like it's a very common thing when people talk about their internal processes, I think, to say something like something inside you is dying, like a part of you is dying to shedding, like you might say. And I feel like we have such a fear of death as a concept overall that our shedding process is like horrible, and it doesn't have to be horrible at all. Like I'm not.
It's kind of like.
Go ahead.
So it's kind of like you have like this perfect template, and then you take on this baggage of grief and what could have been and what should have been, and all this reflection instead of living in the moment. And it creates like like if you look at it like your body's like a template, and then you carry a bunch of baggage, and then the template gets thrown off. Like the cookie cutter is now like being bent and stretched in different ways, and like the more that you don't shed, then the more that you respawn from a broken template. Like, because whether you eat trash or whether you eat chronically,
Mm-hmm.
your body is still regenerating from a template. Emotionally, physically, always is constantly regenerating from a template. And like the more that you're carrying this baggage, it's it's creating like a wobble in the template. It's like the template just breaking down because you're just trying to carry on, bring that old stuff through, and you never fully shed. Like you were saying, you never fully shed.
Yeah, I was reading something today. I was reading it to my friend that, Krishnamurti?
No.
He's he's an Indian guy that does lots of critical thinking, but he sort of just talks about separate subjects. Like he'll have a chapter in his book, on love, on death, on fear, whatever. And the way he describes love is I'm just really like paraphrasing this a ton, but love as the unknown. And in the other chapter, he also talks about death as the unknown. And there's a really important interplay to, like, Krishnamurti will go through, and the way that he would define love is he goes through all the things that are not love. And he says, like, thought is not love. And it just brings up the idea very strongly that, like, love doesn't really have a reference. It's not a void in the same way that death is. But I feel like our fear of death, or our lack of just, like, I don't know, our resistance to death, our fear of death, makes it also very hard for us to step into love. Like, we're carrying around so many thoughts and concepts. I mean, it's all obvious, but it's still just really interesting. Like when I observe other people and myself not like being afraid of death, and seeing how that by definition sort of keeps them from living in the moment and living present. And you're killing yourself. Like there's some other quote that I read or heard someone say that was, the person that doesn't fear death doesn't experience death in their life. They just, when death comes, it's just like a change of perspective. And why I said that was, if we're sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like Lao Tzu. He was saying if you had if you completed a full day and you used all the energy in a complementary way, that you'll meet sleep the same way you would meet death if you had a complete life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel like you can, that's like the duality thing, like once you start separating death from life and thought from emotion and things like that, like I really don't feel like there's any, you can't really separate love and hate. I don't really feel like you can separate these things. I mean, to some level, I guess if you want to, you can, but at the same time, I just feel like it's all an extension of love or selfless giving, whatever you want to call it, if you can define that thing. It's the more you separate death from life and not look at it like a complete process, it's gonna you just be more separate, and you're just more separate in your being. It's like it's kind of just like a lot of people just spoiled, or a lot of people is just spoiled, man. They just expect things, you know what I mean? So it's like, your grandma dies or somebody dies, suddenly, and you're just like, man, like, why me? How did this happen to me? And it's just a lot of people going through a lot of things, so it's not, you can't really take it personal. You just, the only thing that benefits the situation is just being, appreciative and seeing and just investigating the perfection of things, the cause and effect of things that brought about the event. And then what can that do? How can you apply that to your life? If that's the thing, like if you're afraid to live, you're afraid to die. So just go hand
Yes,
in hand,
exactly. That's like, the root of it. If you're afraid to die, you're afraid to live.
Yeah, you can't really separate them because they're not two different things in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, life is animated death. You can look at it like that. Like life itself is animated death. It's the process of dying. It's the process of dying. Yeah. And you could also look at, life. So, every breath brings you closer to the source. Literally, you're dying.
Uh-huh.
Or like, or getting closer to your center.
Yeah, and the whole, like, so when you're acting from darkness. No, I mean, I don't even know how to, I wanted to talk to you about this in an earlier episode, but I did not know how to verbalize it. The whole concept of when you're truly in yourself, in your complete presentness, you are like the darkness. There's no, I don't know how to even put it. It's just like this. It's the opposite feeling of like, you know, how you described, like you're taking in so much light and you take in too much light and it's not processed. It's like you feel, I don't, I don't even know how to put it. It's just like the most alert state ever of being in darkness. But I don't mean in any like dark way. I wish I could.
I mean, it's kind of like the way fire clings to its fuel, which is darkness. You know, kind of the way, you know, it's clinging to it. You know, it's clinging to its source of energy. So it's, I don't know. It's kind of like the law of attraction thing as well, where you like, you know, the more you force things, and the more you don't see anything going into fruition because you're focusing on the lack. I mean, you could look at death as law of attraction. You know what I mean? You're just steadily investing in like the song you sent me, like the art of dying. It's
Mm-hmm.
like every time you make a purchase or something, or you know, do things emotionally that might hurt you or be good for you, you're investing in the way you're dying. Because life is animated death, so you're pretty much you're investing in. It's the law of attraction. You know, it's like if you're in touch with that awareness, that ineffable part of you, then I would have to assume that as the writing on the wall gets closer and closer as far as death is concerned, like you know, if you're in touch with, you know, that awareness, I feel like you probably feel a oneness and like an acceptance with the death itself.
Yeah.
That's right. I did this. I signed up for this. This is the way that I set this whole thing up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the ineffable part of you and that life is animated death. Like they both help sort of bring in that concept of combining life and death. Not combining them, but seeing that they're all one whole. And
yeah, because I mean, you could look at it like in this state, in this animated death state, you know, we're actually dead, and when we die, we'll be alive again, or when we dream, we're alive.
Yeah.
And this is actually what being dead is, and like, there's so many ways to look at it that I don't know how you can separate it, because it's kind of like, who's to say what's right or wrong? Because you can't prove that this is right, and you can't prove it is wrong either.
I know.
That so a lot of people will you know, get on you for like, well, you can't prove that dream was your past life or your actual life, and that this is this then slow dream where you're actually dead.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't prove that it's not true either. So it's like it's so, you know, that's kind of the toughest part about like, I guess, the metaphysical or the death thing. You know, when it's like we're talking about, yeah, like the ineffable side or the you know, the shadows and stuff. So it's difficult to convey. You know, it really is something that I think people got to experience. And sometimes I feel bad for people, man, that have never experienced death. I'd be like, wow, life is gonna hit you so hard at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, and I don't mean that to be like, I really kind of like genuinely feel bad for people sometimes. I'd be like, man, like, you made it this long, you still have grandparents and stuff like that. Like, you should really be appreciating them every second, because life is about to smack the shit out of you. Like,
yes,
you know, and like, you know what I mean? And I don't know. Sometimes I feel like people are ungrateful, but I think that's what you have to be if you never experienced it. Like, it just comes with that territory. Like, I don't even know what could give you the contrast to where you can somehow now be grateful. Like death, nothing has made me more poignant and pay more attention to my life than death.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. So I mean, you see, like, you know, when you reflect on things after death, you're like, wow, I was being so ungrateful here. Or I was not paying attention.
It has everything to do with the gratefulness of life, like the feeling of, it's a really beautiful like combination. The treating people that are alive with you precious, but also letting them go. Like,
yeah,
It's
it's so spoiled. Like, I want you to be here the way I want you to be here, and it's
yeah.
like, man, they lived out their experience. You're like, who are you to, like this is perfect for their life, So you got to accept this, you know what I mean? And it's just a deep spoiled behavior, you know what I mean? And that usually happens though, that kind of spoiled behavior with the immediate family or close relatives because like they kind of bring you back to that infancy. So like when they die, you kind of go back and you kind of like dwell on it more and I could have did this or would have did this. It's harder to just write it off. Like I've had some close friends die. Kids I grew up with. They died throughout my progression in life, and like it sucked. You know what I mean? Especially at the time, it sucked. But it didn't hit me like the people that knew me in my early stages of development. And I feel like since they knew me then, the death brought me back to that place. So it was like all of those parts of me was like mourning. Whereas like if I meet somebody in my adult life, like only the parts of me that can mourn is like the parts that from when I met you till when you die. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's not as deep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have anything else to say about like the younger parts of you mourning?
It's like trying to make a baby stop crying. If somebody has known you since before you knew yourself, then it's like making a baby stop crying. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's one of the most difficult things to do. I think you kind of that's again like law of attraction and kind of let it happen and slowly let the baby get it out, let it go to sleep and then wake up and then go through its processes because it's kind of like there's nothing you can force. You can't just smack a baby and like stop crying.
Exactly.
But the people that drink alcohol and stuff like that in mourning is basically smacking babies.
Yes.
So like it's like you're just smacking the infant in you, and it's never gonna stop crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about? I mean, this is a different angle, but like people who have their children die, or like out of the natural progression of things. Have you known someone? Yeah, that like the idea of having your child die is one of those things that like to look for the perfection in everything obviously is extra hard no matter what kind of death if it's someone that you love, but there's something just like quite horrible about a child.
Yeah, I've seen it close with an only child too. It makes it it really shatters the parents in a lot of ways, but in other ways like I saw like when my cousin he got killed, he was an only child and he died. He was about to turn 23 and his mom was she had that Goliath in her life, as far as like drugs and alcohol. And it's, kind of the same thing with the dad, but he kind of teetered off to just alcohol. And then like once the kid died, my cousin, once he died, like she completely like cold turkey quit everything, and then like he cut down on everything because she quit. And I'm just like, wow, it's just it's crazy. Like if you guys would have just quit before, maybe he'd still be alive. But I guess it's just the way the energy is supposed to flow. Like and there's so many synchronicities in that death that kind of like one of the toughest things for me to write off because it's like, perfect, but in a death way. And, you want to make sense of it and like, is this right or wrong or whatever? But I think that's kind of the journey that he signed up for. The way he lived his life is the way he died. And I think that sometimes in a lot of ways, when people die, you kind of be like, man, it's probably the way they wanted to go, in some sense. Depending on their stage of growth, it might have been true, that they wanted to go these ways instead of going another way and, living out to 100 years and, going through whatever challenges come with that. It's kind of like, as far as making sense of it, you just kind of got to watch the energy of things. Like, it destroys people in a lot of ways, but sometimes it wakes people up. Death is a funny thing, man. It hits people differently. Some people really get hit differently than other people, and I don't know what to make of it in a sense, because I've seen a few people die before their fathers, and it's just destruction of the father, you know what I mean, or the mother too, you know what I mean. I feel like, for some reason the moms I've seen have taken it better, but it just seems like,
how does your heart recover from that?
Yeah, a big sense of like, why me?
Yeah.
For a lot of them, you know what I mean.
So what do you say to that idea of why me, just in general?
I mean, a lot of people are really like subconsciously jealous of the dead person. A lot of people will say like, why me? Take me, God. Why would you take them? Take me. Kind of like a deep jealousy. And just somewhere you weren't paying attention. Somewhere, you're not paying attention to the signs, and you didn't appreciate something at some point, and then this thing happened, and now you can't get over it because you didn't take advantage of your chances to appreciate, because there's no, you can't live with that expectation. If somebody dies at 15, you kind of gotta like, really, that's why you just gotta live every day, because it happens. People die, young, and they're gonna continually die young. It's gonna happen. People are gonna fill that gap in the possibilities of life. There's gonna always be someone dying when they're supposedly not supposed to be dying. So since it's been happening and continues to happen, it's some kind of example that just has to be here. It's some type of energy living itself out and experiencing itself in that way, and it's there for other viewers, or however you want to look at it, to experience that energy, and go through that for whatever growth. Because like a lot of people in this life don't have presence in this life. So you never know. They don't have presence in this life. You know what I mean? So it's like they might be going through some type of energy processes that are really a part of their overall growth. You might see this person as a father, a businessman, whatever. His son dies. Like his presence might not have really been there, but he might just be a piece of that archetype of that person. You know what I mean? Like, say if there's like one archetype and they got split into like 5 different dreams. And in one dream, a son dies, another dream, he lives to be old, has great grandkids and all this type of stuff. Like, kind of like all of the energies and all the possibilities are processing themselves, and like, it's kind of like what has to happen in order for a person or for a being to fully, get their fill of this life thing, this human life thing. Like, I think you have to feel all the feelings before you can truly like let go of the human thing. Like, all of them, all the disgusting ones, and then even though those are not really feelings and those are diseases. I feel like still, like, anger and stuff, you have to feel it to know, what not to do, and then you have to feel gratitude. You know what I mean? You have to feel those things in order to evolve, because like, if you only felt one thing, or if there'd be no contrast, and it's really, there's no form, and then there's no separation, then there's no being. It's only just non-being and conceptualization.
Yeah, that's true. When you were talking about that, it brought up these 2 different concepts that I'd heard you talk about in my mind. Like, one of them was the idea that, like, there's not really that many people. I mean, you'll know what I mean, and maybe you can clarify that there's not that many people on Earth, like individual. Like, there's a bunch of like spread out, like diluted versions of us, and then also the concept. This is separate, but I'm sort of interested about how to think about them together. The idea that we have like a individual energy, like a signature, like our own frequency or something, that when we get to the point where we're really in touch with ourselves, like we're in touch with our signature frequency. And I know those might seem very separate ideas, that they just both came up to me because one makes me feel like very individualized, and one makes me feel like part of this hazy dilution. Do you know what I mean? Like they're giving me different vibes.
Yeah,
But maybe you
I
could
like to go
just
back
talk
to go
about
back to
either to
the
help me
main,
understand more.
yeah, the initial point being that there's not really many people. I guess you could look at it like if there was only like a few hundred people, and then it was just like, I don't know, billions of cars, and it was just only like, and so many cars were just in the way. You had to drive a bunch of different ways to get around them because they weren't really moving. At least not at your pace.
Yeah.
Kind of how you gotta look at it. Like, like they're vehicles, and they like should be treated with respect. You don't just bang into them. But like they're not really here. And like it's probably some fragment of you somewhere that's not really there, wherever it is. And it's just that whole balancing act there where, I mean, every part of the whole is the whole. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
It's just that it's a different ratio, I guess, of being dormant and being active in your consciousness, I guess. And so,
Yeah, like it's rare to envision in your mind someone who represents having almost no dormant consciousness. Like it's funny talking to you where I've heard you speak quite a lot, but I remember in some video, once again, maybe you can pull this together, that you were talking about maybe that you would meet was it like a Capricorn woman from somewhere? Does that ring a bell?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah, what I was
that's
saying is it engendered the idea in my mind of someone who was very all there. You know what I mean?
Capricorn.
No, not Capricorn in particular. Just the idea of meeting someone that's all there. But do you know what I was? You could say something if you could have that make any sense.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. I feel like when you really run into an individual, it's kind of the thing. You treat them like you treat yourself. If you're an individual, so you don't want to capture them or nothing like that because you don't want to be captured. So it's kind of like you just gotta experience them because if you own them, you wouldn't like them. They wouldn't be who they are. They'd be compromised. So you kind of just gotta respect that anybody. When you're in that signature frequency or whatever you want to call it, then you run into somebody else that is in theirs. It's kind of like look but don't touch kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like yeah.
It's really entropy in a lot of ways, like, because only way that you can kind of meet somebody like that is if you're in a space where you guys both balance that area, and whether it be like because you guys are the same but exactly opposite or whatever, it's kind of like there's gonna be some type of entropy there where you're like, oh, this is this transiting version of me.
Yeah.
They feel the same. They feel the same way about you, and then it's kind of just like, wow, we can't even hold on if we want to, and
yeah,
it kind of makes the moment even more precious. But yeah, I think that it's just simply entropy. Like when you really run into those things, because you kind of can't. You for the cold to exist, you need the hot or whatever, and you don't want to make them hot because then you lose your heat, and then you don't become who you are, and then since you gave them something, they shifted. Now you're two different things. You're living in the concept of things, so it's like just just being intent with just observing and enjoying what you can enjoy and learning and stuff like that. I think that's kind of all you can really do when it comes to other individuals, because it's really not many. So you kind of gotta appreciate them, and then just let them go like you would want to be let go.
Yeah, I really like that. What do you have something else to explain about what an energy signature is?
Probably the breath per minute. Really gonna boil down to the breath per minute. Like, as you slow that breath per minute and reduce it, and you just gradually reduce it over the years, and then you have your periods of like where you're doing more breath work, or where you're not doing things to obstruct the breath and you're being creative so that your breath is clear. So you're staying at that signature because so much is flowing through you that you don't want to obstruct it with things. And so that's kind of like the either way. You can do your sessions, or you can just stay continually creative. And that's kind of like your way of staying at the signature frequency. Like, with certain things, like with making music, I don't know, you can listen to it in people's music, when they change their diets and stuff, like you can listen to it when they're on drugs and when they're not on drugs. Like, it's a wild thing. Like, it's a wild thing to look at it, because it's all about your value system, I guess, with the creation. Like, to me, Eminem, before he stopped doing drugs, his music was all right. He was that drug addict guy that made that music. And then, I mean, that probably wasn't his true self, but the music itself was more selfless. It wasn't
I know what you mean.
Forced. He's not trying as hard.
Yeah.
And then, so it's like when you think, when music, when people try, it just hurts to hear it. And I think that if you make music,
in general,
especially vocal music,
in general, when people try, it hurts to hear it. But.
Yeah, when people are so hopeful like that, it's just like, oh man, your heart is about to get broken. But yeah, I just feel like when you're doing things vocally, for me, if I'm doing things, making music, or if I'm, doing a video or an interview or something, like, if there's certain obstructions, it would, you're not going to get you're just going to get a version of me. And so, like, I can hear it in my own voice at this point, like, where I'm like, okay, that's the true voice there. Everything else is the conditioned voice.
Yeah, it's much more about a feeling. I get what you mean. The energy signature, like, I get what that feels like, or would feel like, a deep sense of it. But I guess what I meant when I said the thing about trying wasn't the idea of someone's trying in a hopeful way and they're about to get their heart broke, because that doesn't make me feel bad. I meant more just the whole trying is dying thing, the forcedness.
Yeah.
Like, the hopefulness isn't necessarily forced like that. It's more natural.
I guess it's not willful intent there, just to be hopeful. No, I guess it's like you're willfully intending on hoping, but it's not like you're doing any application of will to bring about the circumstance that you desire.
Yeah.
That's that trying shit. Yeah, that is dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me, I'm jumping around, but so be it. The idea that, like, belief is death, like, in contrast to knowing. And when you don't know, you try. And yeah, it's just, if you're really in your energy signature, you're just I don't know, it's just authentic, and it has that quality, like you were saying, of you're not really, like, touching, like, reaching, grasping, taking from other things.
Yeah, it just flows from the core of your being.
Yeah, and it's like everything's sort of comfortable, including death at that point. Like, not comfortable, just like it's all part of you at that point. You're not really afraid. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fear just makes you hesitate, and then that makes your worst fears come true.
uh, that's too true. It's just, yeah. I feel like it's like the definition of why the adrenal fatigue of people and of society and everything. Just the perpetuation of fear and creating more things that make people afraid. It's just,
Yeah, creating more fearful people. you know,
yeah. I
like
don't know what to say about that, but
yeah, it's like hateful people get with other hateful people, and they make hater kids. It's the same thing. You got two scared people that scared of everything in life. They're gonna have some scary ass kids. You know,
yes, yeah,
it's just handing the torch down of fear.
yeah. That's how it goes. So, jumping a bit. Obviously, our civilization is full of concepts of what happens when you die, whether it's major religions or um, spiritual ideas. Are there, I don't even know where to start on this topic, but I feel like there's something just inherently not useful about having, I don't know, I don't want to reject like the idea of having a concept of quote unquote where people go after we die, but it's just we're inundated with like every single belief system, and every religion has its own version, like whether you're going to live with your spouse on a new planet or you're going to go into heaven or whatever. It's crazy, like the where do all these things come from in terms of people being sure that they believe this thing about death, which to me, I've never been in a position where any story like that has made me feel comfortable with death. Like the feeling death to really be just part of life and part of the void, like feels the best to me. I don't understand the concepts
Yeah, it's
about
kind of
where to
like
go.
I mean, it's kind of like life. Like if you keep living, then you keep getting presented with new challenges and new experiences. And if you're not living, then you'll die, and then those are the same. It's like you get. It's like another challenge, another experience. You know, it's kind of just like the idea of knowing is you just want that certainty. You know, people want the. It's like a big lust of certainty. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why people kill themselves. You know, because it's the lust of certainty. They just like, I want to know. You know what I mean? I know if I drink and smoke, I won't live past 75. I just know it. If I do this, if I live like this, then I won't. You know what I mean? Then my life is apportioned in this way, and my energy is this way. So it's like this idea of knowing is what keeps you ignorant,
Yeah.
and just destroys your energy and everything. And like it's just wild. Like like people will do whatever mental gymnastics they gotta do to have some type of comfort in it. And like I think if you knew it, then you couldn't enjoy the experience. You know, death happens, and you'd be like, oh man, I've been here before. Like you know what I mean? It's just to be like
Exactly.
you wouldn't even appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like there's got to be some kind of difference for life to perpetuate or death, life. You got to perpetuate itself. So some kind of difference has to happen, some type of change,
But I'm glad you brought it
transition.
back to that the lust for certainty thing. Like that is why people commit suicide, whether abruptly or gradually or constantly. Um, it's just, yeah, it's the opposite state of the present state of being, where you're fully animated, like versus fully struggling like hell. Like what was, yeah, where you, it's hell at that point, obviously. life is hell when you're that set on finding an answer that you driven to that much pain. I don't know what to say about that, but I'm just super interested, definitely, in the topic of people not not committing suicide on any level. Like, that's why this topic of being in a healthy relationship with death is like so crucial to me. I feel like the only reason that we do so many, yeah, just like I said at the beginning, the only reason we kill ourselves is because we're afraid of death at a certain level.
Yeah, that's it. Like, if you feel like you can you're taking control of it, then you feel like you've mastered your fate, but in like a retarded way.
In a what way?
In a retarded way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're like, well, if I do this, my odds of living past this age, and usually life is going to disappoint you because you've expected. So as soon as you start investing that expectation energy, you get upset. Seems like that's what life is. You know what I mean? It's just like as soon as you start expecting, it's going to get withheld. So yeah, I think
that's cruel.
it's a funny process, man. I mean, it's like a funny dance. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but it once that what you said there a bit reminded me of like the idea of if you're not forcing things in life and you really know that life comes to you, it's that whole concept is integrated with death coming to you too. Like, you don't have to think of it as this separate, like when is death gonna hit me, like it's
Yeah, like the same way. See, people being ungrateful when challenges come their way and hardships and stuff, they're not using those things. They're not looking at those things like this is here to make me better. This is an opportunity to make me better. Failures are opportunities. All these things are opportunities. So you're not looking. If you're looking at those things like it's just struggle and strife, and it's just because for whatever reason, because you woe is me and everything, then there's no way that you can be grateful for something like death. If you live your life fully or whatever, and you take on the challenges or whatever, by that time that death comes, you're like, yeah, I'll take this challenge on. I'll maintain myself through this process.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's just coming with the territory of being like, well, every hardship is an opportunity. So death is an opportunity for me to evolve in some way that I don't even know, because you're constantly getting the different steps of evolution, you know what I mean? But most people get caught up in, I don't want to say lower, but initial stages of evolution because, like, they look at things like adversity or things that are against them. But
mm-hmm.
these are the things that make you better, so they're actually with you.
Yeah.
They're actually there. You kind of got to look at your enemy or whoever these people are as, or these things, these structures, as something that is designed to make you better, and that you put you there to get better through this experience. But you look at it another way, you're just going to continually miss those experiences and miss all the steps.
Yeah.
And then when death happens, then death is going to come all swift and shit, and you're going to be like, well, I wasn't ready. But yeah, you wasn't paying attention. It's like, all semester you just was not paying attention, and yeah, we got finals now. Like, it's kind of like that. Like,
yeah, it's crazy what a play it is. Like, I just what was I gonna say? I think that what was it? Oh yeah, the concept of like it's obvious, like gratefulness. A lot of people have that logical concept of everything comes to me to make me better, everything's for my growth, everything's for my higher purpose. But that doesn't necessarily come along with the actual gratitude for the things that are in your life now. Like, it's like being at the edge of that concept.
They're not greeting those things. They acknowledge it, but they're not greeting it with the correct energy or whatever you want to call it. It's like oh, I know this is here to make me better, but fuck this shit. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Like, I'm gonna struggle through this. It's gonna make me so strong.
Yeah, you know. But that's it. You know, people have been taught that hard work, you know, and hard is right. You know, and if it's
God,
not
is
hard,
that so ingrained? It's incredible.
yeah. Yeah, you know, when everything is in order and peaceful, you know, typically a person is just gonna create the chaos at that point. You know, well, I guess that's the only thing that's left once everything's in order is chaos and endangerment. It's just like the natural chain of course. Like once everything's in order, it's starting to get out of order now.
What you think that's inherent in the universe?
Yeah, I think so. I think that like okay, now it's completely in order. Everything's completely in order, and then it gets out of order so that you can rearrange it in a different way, and then you appreciate that arrangement. But as soon as it's here, it's already starting to leave, and then you get that different order that you got to rearrange, and like it's feng shui. You know what I mean? Really, in a lot of ways, as far as the energy, like it seems to be like life is constantly moving things around, like moving the furniture around of the world, and I think it's the same thing like with processes in life as well. You know what I mean? Like you just wherever your focus is. You know, if you're focusing on like some OCD stuff and you're constantly doing that, focusing that way, and then you know in other ways you lack focus, and it just every time you get to that point of like everything is complete, then of course the challenge that is needed at this point for you to get past this is for you to be okay with dirtiness, so that you can you know rebuild and make something even better, and then you get another. It's like new level, new devil type thing. Like kind of you know you don't really want to go back to first grade math. You know once you get up, you know once you're in like a higher level math, you're like man I don't want to. I want to do, you know, plus and minus. Like, it's not challenging enough. Like,
yeah,
you know, I think that it's kind of just inherent in the system. It's not like you gotta like, you know, be like worried or whatever. I think you shouldn't worry because you know it's happening. Like,
exactly.
you know, like okay, everything's in order. I got my car, I got my house, I got my spouse. And then you have a kid, and everything gets out of order. You know what I mean? But it's like this learning process throughout that process, and then you get things back in order maybe, and then they have a kid, and then everything's out of order. You know, who knows? You know what I mean? But it seems like that's how life goes. Like you know, you get everything in order, and then it's almost like a credit system where you're like, how far away from this order can we get?
Yeah, I guess I'm convinced now. I think that there's just it just makes me remember there's a huge difference between when you're afraid of all the moving parts around you and when you just see that as the way of things, where that's not really scary. That is just how it's always been. Like that's how it is. It's not like you're having to be afraid of, oh no, it's all gonna fall apart on me. It's like that's how
it's gonna happen.
It is.
Yeah, like it's gonna fall apart, you know, but
it doesn't have to be hurt or be bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably might, but
yeah, it depends. You know, it depends on how you greet things, but it really is a process of that. You know what I mean? It's the only way that we can really challenge ourselves as beings to like, you know, you complete the Rubik's Cube, then you just like break it, spin it all into different colors again.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know.
We've got some awesome, crazy Rubik's Cubes going on.
Yeah. Like, that's how life seems to be blossoming, too. Like I was saying, like, you feel shame and then you feel pride, or you feel pride and then you feel shame. It's just like the inhale and the exhale of that signature level of energy. And it's kind of like how life is just constantly folding the pages. You know what I mean? Like, it's just constant like that, you know, where it's all, you know, you're breathing, you get your inhale, you assimilate, and then you exhale. It's kind of the same thing where you're just like, you take on the energy, go through your experience, you run out of energy, then you have to get more energy. And there's always that point between breaths that's like your reflection point. You know, and the more that you appreciate breathing, the more that space is between breaths. You know what I mean? It's more calm it is. You know, it's more calm.
The more the
you know
darkness, in the way that I was trying to describe it, is like really present with you. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just the presence. But
yeah, no, that's all it is. It's all about the presence, man. Like it's just, just how calm are you gonna be? Like, because if you get a lot of people, I think everybody experiences the presence in their lifetime, but it's like, in what position were you to receive at that point? Some people just not, and their body's just not in position to receive, like in a steady way. So they get the presence, and then they just burn it out, and then they go crazy and have a small period of success, and then they be like, oh man, what happened? What went away? So you just not harnessing and like housing the presence, and you just can't appreciate it that way, And it's kind of like the life and death thing, like when it comes and goes, like. When you are creative or whatever, and you have those periods of like where you can't put the pen down or whatever it is you do, it's like total. It's like the possession you do want. It's like
yes,
it's a different. It's like to have that presence there. It's almost like one of them things like where it became like my biggest drug in a lot of ways. Where I was like, man, like I just want to feel the way it feels to channel without thinking, and just give myself like that, and I just feel like, with creation, that's how the creator experiences itself. So that's the only way that you can really experience the creator, is through creating. So it's like, it's really like, to me, the greatest feeling, even if it's just a small note or a memo or something like that. It's something that like has come in waves in my life to where I'll be like, okay, I got it now. I know this shit now, and I'll never come down off this place. But then, it's like the next level of challenges. It's like, nah, like you just reached that peak point of alignment, and now you kind of gotta go through this next valley and peak, and like you gotta manage it better to where you can stretch it and experience it. It's dope, man. It's dope, man. Life is dope. It's just, it is a dope situation, but I know a lot of people are in traumatized states or, dire states where they don't have that moment to breathe, but, I think it always balances out at some point, man. If you don't have the time to, immerse yourself in tranquility and stuff, like, you probably have other energies and other powers that are balancing it out that you can, parlay your way into a healthier life gradually. It's just a lot of people get caught up in what's against them and then not what's going for them. And with the different value systems, the material value system, it's kind of, you're always going to overlook certain things because it's just not in alignment with the true value system, really.
Could you say something more about the true value system?
Like selfless giving being like the truest value, it seems. Like
you say that so casually.
To give. Yeah. No, like that's what it seems like, purest form of giving is anonymous to anonymous and all that stuff. Like, just.
That is so beautiful.
Not getting Huh?
That's very beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, hope is the man. But no, so like, it really is like, when it's true and it's not with intention and it's not with expectation, you're not giving expecting to receive, even if like, people give and they're like, I know karma's going to treat me like, you're already kind of fucking with the energy.
I know, it's so, like, I'm so sick of all that karma talk for that reason.
Yeah, man, it's like, just giving from a place of almost unconsciousness in a lot of ways. And like, that's the Tao thing, man. Like, they're saying the Tao is good. The master is good to people that are good, and she's also good to people that aren't good. This is true goodness, and she trusts people that are trustworthy and that are not. This is true trust, like, because it's like, I gave my energy from this place. The physics of this means that ultimately a bunch of smoke and mirrors can happen, but ultimately I'm going to receive that energy back some way or shape or form, because that was what I gave out. It has to come back. Everything else in between is kind of a distraction or just a process, really. So it's, it really is. It's really just selflessly given with no expectation, and then you're allowing creation to flourish in ways that you don't know, and then you can be surprised, like if you really just help somebody that you don't know, or different ways of helping life itself, I don't know, whatever you're doing, whether you just help the animal out that was trapped by a trap or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, whenever you help life out, and it's like, it's genuine, like, it really is all about your own sincerity. So as long as it's sincere and you're doing that, then you allow creation to flourish, and then you allow yourself the opportunity to be surprised. Because that's all anybody wants to do anyway. They want to be surprised. Like, once I reach this point of I've seen the world, I've been in these relationships, I've had these vehicles, or I've rode these planes and did these things in different places, and it's like at some point you just want to be surprised, because when you were like in the process of it, you just were constantly getting surprised, like, oh, this is what they got here.
Yeah,
this
totally.
This is what first class is like.
Yeah.
Or this is what a Benz is like, or whatever it is. Whatever it is. But then, since it's fleeting, you're like, man, when's the next surprise? Like, when's the next surprise? Because it doesn't really fulfill.
Yeah.
And like, so it's kind of like, if you give in them gentle ways with no expectation, it's like you kind of investing in that surprise bucket. Like, life kind of got to show up at some level, like,
Yes.
You put the ball in life's court.
That's nice. Yeah. I guess I'll jump to this topic, because you used putting in a court, even though this does not have to do with death, even though everything has to do with death in some way. It's the sports mentality. I like many people, like I was telling you, I was a big Kobe fan. I grew up like the biggest Laker fan ever. Like I would cry when they lost, and like when they lost to the Celtics, it was probably like one of the worst things that had happened to me in my life, even though it makes absolutely no sense. And
that's how it was with the Giants growing up. I always didn't like the Eagles from Jersey. I didn't, again, I didn't love winning. I just hated losing. I hate losing to the Eagles. Like, I would really get so mad that I'd be, tearing up as a kid just because the Giants lost to the Eagles. It's like, it's crazy. It's just the conditioning. It's the same thing. It's kind of like religion. It really is religion.
But yeah, it is, and also attached to it, that whole idea of things being hard and driving, and like the whole fight of sports. Like, that is such an internalized thing for me even today. Like, to get pumped up by watching, like, I'm not saying it's bad at all, like it's that sports are bad or something like that, but there's just that growing sense that it feeds part of that inner violence, that sports mentality. Could you talk about that a little bit more? Could you help me?
Yeah, I mean, it makes it easier to be in the againstness mode, to have to be in the adversity mode. But it doesn't really. You're always playing yourself, and
yes,
when you're
exactly.
not, when you haven't trained the way you can, like mentally, your body, the mental and physical end of it, that is kind of like you hiding a lie. You go and compete, but if you haven't been shooting those jumpers, like at some level, you just know, like, you know that this person isn't better than you, but you just haven't you don't deserve it.
Yes.
You know, and it's like, it's just the process, you know, and I think that, like, people really get caught up in, like, this person or that person or whatever, but it really is just, like, it really is just you. You're always playing you, and it doesn't really matter if you really perfected whatever it is you're doing, then, you know, good things will come of it one way or another. It's like no way for you to lose, especially if you're coming from a place of, like, love, like, where you're like, yo, I do this because, like, I'm naturally, like, inclined to do this, like, from it's just the sincerity in me and my body, like, to move in these ways. This is something that is just like breathing. So, you know, when you're doing it, when it's like that, and you really never, you take a loss and you're never really on some, like, oh, it was just better or whatever. Like, I mean, sometimes teams are better, but usually when you're a competitor, you're usually going to be like, man, I really gave it to them too. Like, they took it, but I gave it to them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like kind of the way it goes. Like, and so I think it's more respect for the process. It gives you more respect for the process too. Like, because then you're like, man, this is what it feels like to be on this end. And I know what I got to do to be on that end. And, you know, losers need winners, winners need losers. And so, you know, it's kind of like, there's never any againstness, really. It's just all in your mind of, like, how you think things are supposed to be, you know what I mean? Or, like, I don't know, like, it's deeply ingrained in people to be competitive and have a competitive nature, because it's like this lack of success in the world, this projection of there's not enough success in the world. But, you know, people doing a bunch of things that aren't in alignment with their value system or what they need to experience in this lifetime, because, you know, maybe you are here to experience, you know, if you, I don't know, a Weinstein, maybe you were here to experience that pedophilia and shit like that or whatever, sex traffic or whatever. Maybe you were here to experience that. Like, that was just really where your capacity was. And, like, that's what you were here for, you know, and it's kind of like, it comes with, you know, that just comes with that energy. And I feel like if you're trying to make moves based on, like, your concept of how things should play out or other people's ideals, then you're constantly just going to miss the things that are tailored to you.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. And I'm just going to go for sorry, go ahead.
I said they got millions upon millions of us wanting to be that draft pick or that signing that scholarship.
Yes.
And it's like, you know, this many people can't care about a child's game this much, genuinely. It's filling some other gaps, but you genuinely can't care. Again, this is where death comes in, where, like, you know, people, they engage in shit that doesn't grow them, and then somebody dies, and they're like, what the fuck was I doing, you know?
Yes.
And that's kind of where you can, you know, it's where you can really appreciate death, you know what I mean, and in some ways, because you might have never woke up if they didn't go to sleep.
Yeah, so a gratitude, like, what are some of the things that kill gratitude? Like, I feel like we talked about the angle of what helps bring about gratitude, but, like, I mean, gratitude is scarce as heck. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, but it's just the measuring and the expecting. Like, you know, you could be talking to somebody that you feel like, man, they're never gonna fucking get this shit, man. You know, like, but whatever, I'm gonna just stay here, you know, keep supplying the energy when they ask me questions or whatever, and, you know, provide the best insight I can provide.
You must feel like that all the time.
Yeah, you know, pretty frequently. You know, so it's like, it really is a challenge. It really is a challenge, you know, like, where it's like, okay, I know that this energy is gonna come back. It's my duty to keep the charge of the energy right, you know?
Yeah, I feel that.
You know, if it's shitty energy, then, you know, I cut it short, and then it doesn't really build. It's just shitty energy. You know what I mean? But if it's something that could really become something and really grow a person or whatever, and like you feel like maybe they'll reach somebody else or whatever, then it'll come back in some way or another. Like it might not come back in money, it might come back in the things that money was going to get you, or whatever, or you might not have to spend money because you got something else, and you went with a different plan because of the way that this way took you. So like, it's just the expect. As soon as you expect and measure, like, okay, I talked to this person for this long, that should be, well, average person gets $10.75 an hour minimum wage across the country.
Yeah.
So, then I should get at least this because you know what I mean. Like it's just, as soon as you start measuring and expecting, it's like impossible to be grateful, yo.
Yeah.
Like it's just impossible.
Yeah, that's a good pointer to it. Yeah. So
yeah, I really feel like if you wake up a bunch of people that are like totally unconscious, like if you wake them up a little bit, you probably get like one person that breaks through, and you're like, man, I'm glad I stuck with this just to meet this one person. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It probably, it balances out tailored to you. It doesn't balance out based on your idea of what should happen and based on what you need to happen. You know what I mean? And like, if you can accept that, then I feel like then you can just stay grateful always because you're like, man, this must be what I needed because this is what's happening. Like,
yes.
And if it's a bad thing, then it's preventing me from doing something even worse later if I acknowledge it.
Yeah. So, let's see. Let me see if there's something else that I wanted to say about the art of dying, because like in that song that I sent you, The Art of Dying by George Harrison, he's of course coming at it from he was into all the Indian traditions and like the Hindu perspective, and he's someone who believes in reincarnation, probably just somewhat how it's taught. And the way that I've been sort of thinking of the art of dying isn't necessarily at all like just about like when the time of death comes, are you ready for death? Even though I'm sure that's a fascinating thing to be more aware of. I was mostly thinking about it in terms of just the flat out idea that in your life you can't really be living as long as you're resistant to death. And so the art of dying, like to me, is it like in the song it says something like, and as nothing in this life that I've been trying could equal or surpass the art of dying. Like I feel like this topic of feeling comfortable with death sort of like comes over and takes over all these areas of life that I've been like trying to struggle with internally, like find all these internal solutions, like grasp for all this knowledge, like try to figure out why this or that trauma happened, or like struggling to get out of it but not being able to get out of it because I'm in this struggle mindset. And like all of that is calmed and like put in its right place by the concept of like having an awareness of a non-fear of dying. And I feel that just makes me feel like, brings me closer to the whole concept of breath so much, of being able to connect to the inhale and the exhale and without fear, instead of feeling like I'm constantly caught up with fear, so I never really get to get deeper. And yeah, so I'm just really like grateful for this topic of death in itself, for how encompassing it is. Like it feels really soothing, like healing. I don't know. Do you?
Yeah, I feel like you just can't. You're never really ready for things that you've never done before, and the things that you've done before, you generally don't have to redo. So like, it's just a funny thing, man. Like how the not being ready creates like a perfect vulnerability to where
Yeah.
you can be in the moment more and bring things out of yourself that you never would have expected. Because again, expectation is going to block. So if you're like, all right, I'm about to play this game and I'm about to do this and score this many points, then like it's different than when you're just like, oh, I'm just go out here and see what happens, and then like just being fluid in your in your life like that.
Yeah.
The thing,
That's what
you
I
just
mean.
go unconscious. You just go unconscious, and then the things happen, and you're like, wow, this is better than anything I could have expected.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like you can never really be ready, but you don't want to be.
No.
In a lot of ways, like it's kind of like I guess that's what makes it like compelling.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to but you said using vulnerability in that sense felt fitting.
Yeah, like if there's no vulnerability, then there's no creation. When it's all secured, or this idea of security, it fucks with the creation. Like
yes.
if you give a person everything and they're just like, they just have everything, it's just difficult for them to have that same kind of hunger that the person that don't have those things. And like, it's just, you're vulnerable either way. You have these things, and now you're vulnerable because you can actually lose these things because you don't even know how to respect them.
Yeah.
Whereas the person that doesn't have, they're almost in a point of like forced to live in the moment because it's do or die every moment. So like, they continually work through it because they stay in present and they're staying, making the next move that they need to make. So it's like, it's a perfect dance. It's always like a perfect dance with that too, like a vulnerability. Like at some level you want some, I guess, security, but if there's no vulnerability, then there's no fluidity, and it's just rigid creation, and it doesn't really blossom. It just makes copies. It doesn't make a whole color wheel. You know what I mean? It's just bland copies until everything is black and white.
Yeah. Do we have that? We have a society of bland copies. It's part of the perfect dance, I guess, but
yeah. I mean, it's just a bunch of people that they have just a misidentification, and that's really the main issue. A deep misidentification of like what they are, who they are, where they come from. Like it's just a huge misidentification. So it's always going to lead to people limiting themselves because they're like, oh, I got this anger problem. Oh, I got this depression problem. Oh, I got, whatever it is. Like, it's just like never ending limitation. Like when you're identifying with these concepts, and whether they've been thrown on you by your family or whatever, it's just constant, man. Like it's just, you look at people and you're like, man, you could be this or you could be that, but your identification is in another place, and you're just not seeing what I'm seeing here, and you would have to like climb that mountain in order to really see this potential that's inside you. But most people, they think that it's like some deep fearful thing that they need to be afraid of, but they need to be more afraid of not realizing themselves, because a lot of people invest a lot of time in ignoring and distraction and things like that, and it really is like, it's just it brings that, again, it's that sense of control. It brings that demise, man. It brings that rapid deterioration because they're operating from a place that is limited. So it's always going to be like I gotta make my ends justify my means, and I gotta do. It's always gotta be like that. Like it's always gonna be uh, a conquering situation as opposed to like accepting. And it's like everything on the other side of anything that you go through is you. Is you, and a more realized you. That's what's on the other side of anything you go through. So people are afraid of that. That's the crazy thing.
What do you mean they're afraid of
Like
that?
they're afraid of a more realized them. Like if you go through a certain experiences, if you were to go do yoga every day and do a half-hour breath work before bed, and
Mm-hmm.
and after you wake up, then it would bring about a different perspective, and then you would be more yourself. You'd be more realized.
Yeah.
And you would never be able to go back. And it's like this fear. It's a deep fear of like something that will actually,
Do you have that
is
fear?
really the most gentle thing. Yeah, it's tough to go back to that place of being that gentle. You know what I mean? Being that gentle with yourself, like creation is. Like creation's a really gentle thing. It's really, it starts off really small. Whether you want to break it down to sperm and egg, and like the balance of things, like the woman generally has to have 3 consecutive cycles that are on time, and then just the delicacy of things, and like it's just as far as creation is concerned, like what you got to return to observe yourself or to observe creation from that place of contentment, or from that place of enlightenment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's a deep level of softness that like most people, it just goes against their idea of themselves, because that softness feels like the vulnerability brings pain.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people did get hurt when they was vulnerable, but they just never got over it, and so it's sad to see, but if they can get over it, then they're twice as strong. So it's
Yeah.
it's a gift and a curse, really.
Thank you for reminding me about the softness. Like I was able to to feel it a little bit. Like, yeah, what you would be going to, what you do go to when you're a more realized version of yourself. Yeah, it's crazy how identified you get with the adrenal fatigued, the traumatized version of you.
Yeah, the stressed out version.
Yeah, the stressed out version, and for some reason, there's a fear of not being stressed out. Which, yeah, that seems like some weird root of it. Like, why would people not be doing things that are bringing them back to their health? Like,
Man, you don't understand how many times I've tried to do breath sessions with people, and like they're so self conscious, even just about doing the sounds and stuff. And like I'm like, man, I have my eyes closed. I'm not watching you. I can just hear you over there opening your eyes and fidgeting. Like I know I've done this enough times to tell. Like
yes,
you've opened your eyes and you broke it.
yeah,
So like it's just funny how much people are just so self conscious, like about like nothing though. Like it's like their own idea of themselves that like they get disturbed by. Like if it doesn't behave in accord with this idea, my body doesn't behave in accord with this idea, then that means I've lost value or I'm not strong or whatever it is. And it's like,
yeah,
it's just crazy, man. Like you see people, grown people, afraid to just close their eyes in darkness and make and ventilate some sounds that vibrate the endocrine system. And like it's just it's amazing. People are extremely traumatized, so I guess I just gotta have compassion, but that's kind of like the depths of the self consciousness. People are constantly in the idea of themselves. They're not really living from first person.
mm-hmm.
And like the phones really don't help.
No, the technology altogether, but
really don't help.
But yeah. So I guess before we hang up, I would like to touch on the concept of what it means to see the one grand dream, as you put it, because there's once again, like, society's absolutely full of a zillion concepts about dreams and your own personal dreams and chasing your dreams and developing your dreams, but there's a completely different, like, concept or feeling of what a dream is when you're in the real, like, first person perspective. Like, it's it's not about your your personal dream anymore in that way. And could you talk a little bit more about the quality of, like, what the one true dream is?
It just brings you back to that commonality of all life. It brings you back to that common ground that everything shares. Um, it's a place or a not place, I guess you could say. If however you want to look at it, it's a space where no space exists. Because in space you have separation, you know what I mean? And a space where there's no space, it sounds paradoxical, but it's just complete oneness and complete everybody or all being, all life itself is in this common ground, and everybody and everything has a common ground, like something that is a commonality that is shared,
Mm-hmm.
that brings everything back to the oneness.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the grand dream is pretty much like this template of life that is forever being expressed, and all of life is a copy of this, because there's only one perfect, man. Just like there's only one consciousness, you know what I mean? It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's no separation. There's only one perfect. Every expression of perfect is an extension of that one.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you're in this place where it's so basic, it's so pure because it's so basic. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a place that's unadulterated, and there's desireless because there's no space. There's only oneness. There's no seeking. It's just observation of the oneness, and you're just meeting at that common ground. From your perspective, from whatever body that you're viewing life from. And you can look at it like there's the common cell in everybody that is like a meeting room that
Mm-hmm.
everybody and everything returns to.
Mm-hmm.
And you can experience the oneness through this piece of you or this non-piece of you, and it's the perfect template. It's just perfection. It's just a complete template of the way life proceeds, and
Mm-hmm.
all of life is just a reflection of that perfect template. And it's like, it's such a basic thing. It's such a simple thing that it's so difficult to explain.
Yeah.
That it's just it's ineffable in a lot of ways because it's so perfect that it's like all the bases are covered. So I can't really, it's like if you were pointing at a color wheel or something, and you're like, it's really, magnificent over here or whatever, and you describe it. But then there's another color on the other side that's magnificent. It's just like there's no taking away from anything.
Yeah, that
like
non-piece, though, when you said not that non-piece of you, that, I don't know, that touched it a bit, I thought. Or at least
yeah,
the
because there's
sensation.
you're living from a place that doesn't create opinion and doesn't create value, because you need separation for value. You know what I mean? Like, to say this is greater than this. So there's a part of you that is always at one with everything. And like, when you go if your consciousness is focused on that part or not part, then you experience a life without opinions, a life without value, a life without, I guess, general objection. It's just pretty much just receiving and accepting and pretty much just all, like, I feel like when you create from that place, like, because if you're viewing life, you're kind of creating at the same time. So if you're in complete awe like that, it just furthers that expression, or the perception or reception of that oneness or that not place, however you want to look at it.
It reminded me of a point in my life when I felt like I saw that not place very intensely, but I get it in this more the ever present place to access, or not access but recognize. And
it's like you're always there, really.
Yeah. Yeah. You are. It made me think of the whole idea, not the idea, but that I'm talking to myself in you. Like that I feel grateful for talking to your own self in someone else. It's funny.
Yeah, like that's the common ground that you communicate through and everything. And everybody got either a mutual or a direct common ground, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, the idea of the common ground with everything. So
I feel like that's what the common ground is, like, everything returned into its source in a lot of ways. And so that's the thing, like I was saying today, man, like the good is the fuel of the evil. Evil is parasitic, it has to eat itself. It eats its own. It has to live off the good. Evil eats away at its own goodness and then eats away at the goodness around it. So since the goodness is the fuel, once the evil has reached a point where it's dominating the goodness, then it no longer has fuel. So it's like
that's a little bit of a sad concept. I mean, I know it's not.
It no longer has fuel. It's like that's when it's kind of the same thing. Like I was saying, like when you get everything in order, then it's beginning to get out of order. It's like the evil.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything else to eat, so it's just like stops.
Yeah, like, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Like it's kind of like because it has to return to that common source. It's an extension of that good. It was living off its own. It ate on its own good and other good. So it can't win because it's like it ate away its own legs. So it's kind of like same thing. Return. And
but good doesn't
that commonality.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you good. You good.
I was just gonna say so good doesn't eat. Do you think of good as eating evil, or in the same way, or is it different?
No, I think when it comes to like credit, it's like there's one source of credit, and as soon as you start trying to take credit instead of giving credit, then you become evil. It's like there's one creditor. The creator is the one creditor, and all the people that give credit to that which gives it, to the source that gives them credit, and credibility, then those people are perpetuating wholesomeness and oneness. But the people that say, I did this is mine, and this is a product of me and not what comes through me. That's kind of like
that's such a bad feeling.
That's kind of where it begins to end. Yeah, the evil is gonna eat away at its own first, and then it just gets more hungry as it eats itself, and then it starts trying to eat, external expressions of good. And if it gets to a point of where it's controlling the power, it's just like it ate itself too much to now where it can't even perpetuate. It's just the power has to get relieved, go back to the good, and it's just expansion and contraction. It seems like just like the breath.
Are you talking about that in terms of like leaders or whatever? Or what context were you thinking about? I'm
like anything, whether it be a nation that's just overwhelmed by greed or whatever it is. Like as soon as that reaches its precipice, as soon as it reaches peak,
Yeah.
and they're totally eating away at the good, and the good is, just totally submitting, then it's already the beginning of the end for the evil, because it ate away its support system.
Yeah, I see.
Because without good, it can't. Yeah, it needs the good to feed off of. It needs that, because once everything becomes evil, then it all eats itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels just like that. Like that sensation of it eating itself inside you, like that, if you're taking credit or whatever other version of evil it may be. Yeah.
It's just creating that separation. You know what I mean? Like, just whoever's creating separation is engaging in it. As cheesy as it might sound, it's like, oh, I give all glory to God, or I give all the credit to God. It's the reality, man. I mean, kind of like in the Tao, it says it in Tao Te Ching is like, when the master when the master governs, people are hardly aware he exists. And then when people achieve the things that they want to achieve, then they give no credit. Because the master is so subtle and so productive that people miss it. And it's just funny, man, because you see it all the time, man. You see anybody that is taking the credit or creating separation, they all get killed or imprisoned, or they have smear campaigns about them. Whenever you create separation, it's just like putting a target on your back.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's amazing how how obvious that manifests itself. Yeah, and I feel like back to the death thing, that the times, I mean, this goes without saying, but the times I feel the least balanced in terms of my relationship to death are when I've isolated myself in this, like, fighting for myself, and I have to create a bunch of value out of myself. Like, when I'm stuck in that, I'm like miles away from the sense of, obviously, of everyone, of there being one being, and death being just something that feels at home with me. It's like impossible to feel like that. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we've been going for quite a long time, which has been very nice. Do you have anything else that you want to add about death?
Just people just should appreciate people while they can, and appreciate things while they can. That's really about it.
Yes, that is it. I can cut that part out and put it at the beginning too.
Word.
I think that's the only part that we need to have people hear. Like, they don't avoid that.
Yeah, that's the synopsis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So.
All right then, Maya. I guess just hit me with that whenever you're ready.
I will. Sounds good.
All right then.
Good night.
Yep. Good night. Peace.
Peace.